Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Stay Grounded podcast. I am your host, Natalie Q, and I'm super excited to welcome our next guest. Her name is Dr. Carollaine Garcia. She is a joy coach, speaker, and writer whose journey from the Dominican Republic to America is a true testament to her tenacity and passion for personal growth. After earning a PhD and consulting with prestigious global organizations, Dr. Garcia's pursuit of success led her to a pivotal moment during the pandemic. Confronting her childhood wounds and embarking on a journey of healing, she discovered a new chapter awaiting for her, one of empowerment and transformation. With a deep commitment to holistic healing and feminine leadership development, she felt empowered to honor her ancestors and started her own firm based on her creative passions. Dr. Garcia Brands is dedicated to helping creative women entrepreneurs conquer imposter syndrome by rewriting their narratives, embracing their authenticity, and stepping confidently into the creative potential. Everyone, please help me welcome Dr. Carollaine Garcia. Welcome, Caroline. I am so excited to have you on the Stay Grounded podcast. How are you today? Tell us how you're feeling.
I'm excellent. I'm super pumped to talk to you today. I can't wait to see how the conversation goes and what comes of it.
Yeah. Well, just a little background on how you and I met. I was hosting an event at the Green Room in Inglewood, and your cousin brought you over to one of my events, and we kind of just connected. So I thought that was like really, really cool. It just goes to show the power of community and the power of, when people come to your events and what can happen in a beautiful space. So I'm so happy to have you here. And as we get started, I do want you to tell us a little bit about you and who Dr. Carollaine Garcia is. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yes, yes. And I'm so grateful to my cousin to have brought me to that event and given me a chance to meet you. The question, who are you, is such a big question, right? How do you answer that? My story started in Dominican Republic. I was born there. My whole family's Dominican. And my mom had a big dream when she was little that she wanted the next generation to be American. So my family and I emigrated to the States in the 90s. I was around 5. And a lot of the beginning of my story was a lot of change, a lot of shifts. I went to 10 different schools between kindergarten and 8th grade. Every year was learning a language, forgetting one. So it's a miracle that I speak both now because there's so much shift, so many changes in my relationships. And one of the things that I tethered to was succeeding and achieving. It's the one thing that was kind of consistent in my life. And so if you look at big picture, what my life has been is just many achievements. I was an honor roll student through everything. I got a pretty hefty scholarship to go to college. I was first generation to go to college, figuring all that out. I was in my high school class. I graduated from college in 3 years. I got my PhD at 25.
Yes. I love that.
It's like striving. And then once I got the PhD, then it was like, now what do I do? What am I working towards in life? What else am I achieving? So I'll say that to summarize kind of like who am I is I've been a woman who's been seeking through achievement, like who I am. And I've tried different jobs and different moves. I've traveled all over the world. I've traveled all over the country. I've done a lot of things in trying to find my way to myself. And so when I say who I am now is I'm a spiritual being that's having a very diverse human experience. And part of that is experiencing a lot of different things, a lot of heartbreaks, a lot of love, a lot of changes in my life. And I think that's the most common theme is I have transformed myself many, many, many times in search of myself.
Oh, I love that. And you know what's so funny? I can totally relate with being the first gen, with being the first person to graduate college and finding yourself through careers. I think that our parents, of course, they tried their best, but they instilled in us a lot of success, needing to be successful and having to be successful and almost perfect in doing so, right? And not intentionally, obviously, it's just, I think they came from little. And so they would never want us to have little. And so, for example, for me, I know my parents always wanted me, I always wanted to be a lawyer. like, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a lawyer. And I quickly went into the law career and I hated it. It was so awful. I mean, kudos to the people that could do it. I was there for 8 years, but it was difficult. That type of field is it's so heavy. And I was never enforced to try new things. I was never enforced to, hey, it's okay to want to try different arts, different forms of arts. So I love that you said that because I can really just relate to finding who you are within your career and what you do. So thank you for mentioning that. I think that's something that's so relatable to so many people, especially our first generation peeps out there. It's almost a heavy burden sometimes. Not intentionally, of course, but it does feel like a heavy burden sometimes. But as I mentioned in the intro, Caroline is a joy coach. And so how and why did you become a joy coach? Like what initiated that for you? Because when I first heard it, I was like, oh, a joy coach? Very interesting. And I was intrigued in knowing more. I wanted to know more. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And how did you even come about becoming a joy coach? I think it's incredible, to be honest, but I'll let you explain to the audience what that is to you and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. So my journey to joy came from a lot of healing and looking back at my life and trying to make peace with everything that had happened to me. And that really came about in a series of things, including the pandemic was the first time that I had to be with myself for an extended amount of time without running away from myself and without even being able to go outside, right? So the distractions that we have, I didn't have them. Like traveling was my purpose. Traveling was my addiction. I was very much the queen of catch flights, not feelings. And,
I love that. Yeah.
And so when the pandemic came and I was forced into stillness, it was very uncomfortable. I felt like I was in prison and the prison was me. And so there was a certain point where I couldn't cry if it wasn't in therapy. And thankfully I had already started therapy. But I had gone into therapy because there were some big wounds that I wanted to heal. And I thought, this is going to take like 6 months, I literally, when I interviewed my therapist, I'm like, I have daddy issues. My father died when I was 21. Can you fix me? And I have like 6 months. So let's figure this out.
Oh my gosh.
And so I had this really deep victim mentality that life had happened to me, that I wasn't worthy of a lot of the valuable things like other lucky people were. And because of bad things had happened to me, that meant that good things weren't going to happen to me. And so it was from that place of not feeling like I was worthy of joy that I then started figuring out, if I was my best self and if my father were alive, if he were here in physical form, because I did a lot of soul searching and studying to figure out how to connect to the spiritual world. And so there was one particular coaching session that I had, is I had joined a coaching program. I had said like, okay, I'm going to be a coach and I'm just going to help people achieve goals because that's what I do. I travel, I check things off my list. Like I'm really great at meeting goals. And there was a coaching session that I had where someone asked me, like, if your father were here, what would he want you to do? And I think about my mother and how she loves me. And if I just transfer that existence to my father still being here, then I admitted to myself that in its purest form, the people that created me would want me to be joyful.
Absolutely.
Me to connect to that and think like that was always the purpose, is for you to reconnect back with your joy, the joy that I had as a child before the trauma built up the layers. And so my desire, and it's still like that, then it took me another year where I had another powerful coaching session. And that's why I believe that coaching is so powerful, because it's the power of the question and the power of somebody holding space for you. That is transformative. And I have a coach and he asked me one question and he said, we're going to do an exercise for 3 minutes. I'm going to ask you the same question and you have to give a different response every time. And I was like, are you going to tell me the question beforehand so I can study? And he's like, I'm
Absolutely not.
like, get it. Okay. So the question was, why are you here? And when I started answering that question, I'm like, oh, I'm here to help people. I'm here to expand people. It was all sort of mental. And by the end of those 3 minutes, I was crying and I said, I'm here to be joy.
Wow. Okay.
And so literally right after we got off that call, I changed my website and went from, I used to brand myself as a mindset and leadership coach because I do have those philosophies under my belt. And then I changed it to joy coach. And,
Wow.
and so part of it is it's a provocative thing to say. Like when
Yeah.
people meet me, right? Like your case in point for you. And I'm like, oh, I'm a joy coach. And they're like, wait, what? What do you mean?
Right. Right. I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. I was like, joy, but it stands out at you because it's not something people would, like you said, it's provocative. Like it's not something people would normally say, or it's usually the mindset coach is usually, all these other things. And so when you said that to me, I was like, I'm intrigued. I need to know more.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, it's
One of the interesting things about joy is that if you sort of flip the emotions, the opposite of joy is sometimes and oftentimes grief, because
mm,
grief is love that doesn't have anywhere to go anymore. And that's where that's
wow. Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? That is so good. That is so good. I need you to repeat that to people.
grief is love that doesn't have anywhere to go anymore.
Yep.
You think
I
about not
love
just
that.
deaths of people, the physical deaths of people, but you think about the deaths of versions of yourself, leaving a job, moving from a place. There are
Mm,
losses because there was energy that you were giving to those places, those people, that version of yourself that no longer has
wow.
that same place. And now you have to figure out where to redirect it. And oftentimes where you redirect it to is yourself.
Yeah. That's
And so
powerful.
joy, if you think about a garden, for example, and it's full of all kinds of things that we inherit from our families and weeds and all things
Hmm.
that we don't necessarily
Yep.
choose. Joy is planting all of your favorite flowers and all of your favorite greenery. It is everything
Oh,
that you desire. And so the mindset, the leadership, the goal setting, all of that leads to that destination of joy. And joy
I
is the
love it.
spark that drives you into authenticity because it's literally what makes you happy.
Yeah. And it's so funny that day that we met, I remember I kept using the word joy.
Yeah.
It was because, and still is, I'm trying to personally find the things, the people, the situations, the creative art that really brings me joy. It's
Yeah.
so important to, people forget that, right? People neglect that in order to pour or to be a leader or even have a business or be a parent or whatever it is, you first need to find that joy. And it's difficult for people to do that.
Oh, yeah.
It's so difficult. I've asked people, sit down, my workshops, sit down and write the things that bring you joy. People take a while to answer that. I remember I had one girl at one of my retreats. What do you mean? I'm like, well, on a day-to-day basis, what brings you joy? What things fulfill you? And I'm not saying it has to, these joys don't have to be something grand because people always think that they have to be like this enormous thing. For me, for example, if I write something like that, going to a cute coffee shop, having a good book, being around community, I've
Right.
realized the last couple of years, I need community. This is how I fill my cup, right? And when I ask people, I thought it was going to be one of those prompts that it was kind of easier for people to navigate through. But then you realize people don't know themselves well. And
Right.
so that also has to do with why people don't know what brings them joy. And it
Right.
took us a while. I was there with people like 30, 45 minutes while they were trying to fill this out. And you know, it brings clarity, right?
Mhm.
Because when you begin to realize what you brings you joy, what you enjoy, right? There's this peace that comes with that. Because then you start to really do these things or rest if that's what brings you joy, or be in nature if that's what grounds you and brings you joy. And through that, I feel like joy, getting to know yourself, you become effective in showing up either for yourself, for people, for your family, for whoever is in your inner circle, you begin to show up so differently. So that's why I love that you are a joy coach, because honestly, girl, we need more people like you to really help us embody that. For a while, it took me a long time to realize what brought me joy. When I asked myself that question, I was lost. I was like, I don't know. I didn't know myself. And this is also part of getting to know who you are. You know, people go through life not knowing
Yeah.
and pouring. And it also comes in a lot of our communities, a lot of Latinos, we're, especially as women, so used to pouring. It's actually what moms do when we're little. They're always pouring into keeping the house and pouring into the husband and pouring into the kids. And they don't remember what they enjoy. And so thank you for doing that work, because honestly, it's one of those things where it's impactful.
Yeah.
Like when you said that, I'm like, okay, so what else comes with being a joy coach? So I love that you explained your history and how you came about that. And it just seems like you're so embodied in that. Even just talking to you and having this conversation, it very much feels like you totally embody these things that bring you joy so that you can then go out and teach them.
I've watched a Barbie movie twice now.
Love it.
When she gets up and she's like, "This is the best day of my life." I feel
Yeah.
like every day is the best day of my life, even if I have like really challenging moments, because my joy toolkit is now so thorough
I
that
love
I
that.
know how to navigate every single challenge that hits, and which is very handy to have as an entrepreneur because it is such an uncertain territory and life is uncertain.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what I found, you said something about this that I wanted to highlight. Like, why is joy important? Because it feels sometimes that it's like frivolous, right? Like, oh, cool. I, went to the park, or I went
Yes.
outside and spent time in nature. Like, why is that good? The reason to embody joy is because your purpose comes from your joy. And when you tap into your
Wow.
purpose, it's not about you. Like, we have often been taught that taking care of ourselves is selfish, but I argue opposite. When you take extraordinary care of yourself, and that's you and I have talked about my framework of queen mindset leadership that goes in depth
Mm,
about multiple holistic ways of taking care of yourself. When you overpour into yourself and you fill every single crevice, you are giving from a place of abundance. You are giving from a
yep.
place of love. And so now that I'm out here and I'm a joy coach, I do speaking, I'm working on a book that's focused about joy. I feel so grounded, and being able to create,
Mm,
continue the toil of creating and giving, because I want to share what I have found within myself with others. It's not coming from a
mm,
place, I have to do this. I get the
mm.
privilege of having come to this earth to find this path, to share this with other people so that they can also share their purpose with the world. And
Wow.
my kind of like moving target is, I imagine a world where if people tapped into their fullest expression of themselves, if you were
Mm-hmm.
authentic and owned every piece of who you are and express that in what you create in the world, oh my God, like the
Yeah.
world
Oh my
would
God.
be more beautiful because we would see so much more art and books and music and creative
Yes.
expression. And, something that really hit me. One of my mentors said something like, the richest places and every place that you go to around the world is the cemetery, because it's full
Oh.
of ideas of books that were never written, music
Wow.
that was never created, art that was never put out, pictures that were never taken. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh. Oh my God. I'm like, do you see me? I'm like, oh my God. This is crazy. Oh no, but it's so true. It's so true. Sadly, it is. And I feel like, again, because people don't sit in their joy and they don't dig into the getting to know yourself deeper, this is why these things happen. This is why creativity never happens. This is why those pictures are never taken. And people are almost afraid,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Afraid to try these things. And it's so funny when I've tried like a million things. I
Yeah.
used to be terrified of trying new things. Terrified. I hated it. I was like, what are people going to think? Oh my God, it's so embarrassing. Now I'm like, thank God I tried all these things. Do I regret it? No. There was something that I learned about myself, about my creative expression, about what brings me joy. I remember I used to, DJ for a long time. I did a lot of deep house music. And what I learned about myself, that music is really my love language. I love to share music with people. You go to a party, and what do you hear? You hear music, and that's how people connect. So I
Right.
wouldn't have known that had I not dug into these creative outlets. So what you just said, I'm like that girl,
And
that, that
imagine
hit me.
how much dull life would be if those artists, those musicians, those creators, if they had not had the courage to put their work out there.
Yeah.
We would consume nothing. Buildings wouldn't be created. Books wouldn't
Yep.
be written. And so what I have found is your joy breaks the fear. There's a certain point where your desire to make impact and be yourself and know the impact that you're going to make by being yourself becomes greater than your fear. Your fear is ever present
Wow.
feeling. It is ever present,
Mm-hmm.
just like a feeling, but it
Yeah.
shouldn't stop you. And joy gives you
Mm-hmm.
courage as if I had not come out as a joy coach, and when I saw you, that was when I first started saying to strangers, I'm a joy coach. I was still trying to figure out
Oh,
how it felt in my body to say that. But there were like 7 of y'all said joy in that community event. And I'm like, okay, universe, like I hear you with the
yeah.
sign. If
Right.
I hadn't had the courage
100%.
to approach you, literally everything that your listeners are going to hear from our conversation would not have happened, because I could have easily
Yeah.
just sauntered out, told my cousin, this was great, thanks for taking me, and that would have been dead right there.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
introduce myself to her and see what happens. Like, you could have just said no. You could have said, I'm not open to this, but I
Yeah.
tried. And like,
Yeah.
look where we are,
I
and
know. I love it.
joy it moves you forward because you stop caring about what other people are thinking and feeling, because you
Yeah.
have to live with yourself from the first moment you take your breath to the last breath that you take.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Yeah.
times, the biggest regrets that people that die have, I didn't live a life true to myself.
Oh my God. But you actually saying that and the thought of it just, it makes me sad. It actually brings me sadness because I just, I know I I could never not live to that authenticity, especially because, this goes into getting to know yourself a little deeper. Again, it all goes back to this getting to know yourself a little deeper. So just the thought of like growing to 90 or not doing all the things that I've done in the 33 years and I still have so much to do, I just can't even imagine it.
Right?
It's sad and it's impactful that you're saying that. And actually, guys, I'm being motivated as I'm speaking right now. I'm like, oh my God, I have so much to do. I have so much to try. So I'm being motivated by this conversation as we're speaking, which is the point, right? Um, I I want to kind of go into. I know you have pillars for
Yes.
joy, right?
Yes.
We were discussing that, and this episode, the 3 simple steps to start feeling joy. I would love for you to walk us through like what those 3 pillars of joy, what they are, and maybe a little bit of how we can embody each, a little background on your research and everything you've discovered about these 3 pillars.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So this framework that I mentioned earlier, Queen Mindset Leadership, came as a result of a lot of different things. One of
Okay.
the pillars was a lot of leadership coaching that I'd done in my previous organization. I coached over, I don't know, 200 people, leaders in my time there, women and men from all over the world in both languages, actually, which was a shock when the first person was like, can you coach me in Spanish? And I'm like, I'll certainly try. And so there's that thread. There's also, I've done a bunch of leadership research in organizations. And like I said, I've worked with organizations, Fortune 500 companies, and gotten to experience leadership. Like, what does it
Mm-hmm.
look like? How do they talk? How do they interact with people? I have personally had like 27 managers in my life just due to the nature of my work. So I've worked under a lot of different leaders as well. And I've read like 300 books in the last 3 years that were focused on
Mm.
development and spirituality, in addition to a gang of therapy, a gang of coaching, and a crap ton of time, like traveling, trying to find myself. So I took all of those experiences, and what I found was lacking was an approach for women to really embody leadership in a way that honors our superpowers, our superpowers of empathy, emotional intelligence, listening, communication, things that are becoming extremely pivotal to success as a leader in modern day times. You have to be able to connect to the humans that are on your team in order to motivate them. It's not just a matter of giving them an assignment, because so many of us work remote, we're hybrid. And if you don't know what's happening with me, it's going to be hard for you to motivate me. If you're just telling me what to do, you don't know me. So I started this. When I started this, it wasn't to create a framework. I was trying to heal. I just had like a devastating breakup, and I was trying to figure out, what is the power of being a woman? Because I don't see those examples in modern day. I don't see how a woman can be both powerful and well taken care of. All I see is women that are leaders and burnt out, and I don't want that. So how do I create leadership for myself when I've also been denied opportunities as an Afro-Latina woman in corporate America, passed over for promotions, told that I wasn't ready when my coworkers who did not look like me were also not ready and still got promoted. So what does leadership mean when you have not had the opportunity to lead others? How do you start with leading yourself? And so my framework is a self-leadership framework. It's something that can be used by everyone, but it's particularly tiered towards women, because the leadership frameworks that we have adopted were modeled after men, because that's who has been in power for the duration of modern history, right? So the first pillar of queen mindset leadership is the queen component, and that is your super badass inner coach.
Okay.
Your coach is someone who wants you to take great care of yourself in multiple ways, because they know that it's by you taking care of yourself that you're going to be able to create sustainable success. And so it starts, and your coach has 3 jobs. Your first job is to shift your mindset. Your second job is to create healthy daily habits. And your third job is to hold you accountable. So the 8 areas are the first step has multiple layers to it. And it's things like spiritual wellness, physical, emotional, but it's also social wellness, financial. And the one component that I've added that I don't often see included is energetic wellness. And that means starting with, how do you want to feel, and then work backwards. So given that I'm a joy coach, my specialty is in helping people find joy. So if you want to feel joyful, let's not start setting goals yet. Let's figure out what brings you joy. Let's do those things, and then you will feel joy by virtue of experiencing the things that bring you joy. And so it really starts with that. You have to look at how you're taking care of yourself every single day. Every day is self-care day. And I call it self-adoration because it really comes from the approach of, again, this inner coach that adores you, thinks you're like the best thing since sliced bread. And so because they adore you and they want you to be your best self, they know you think about the things that we value. We take great care of it.
Yeah.
We maintain it. We give it checkups. We fuel it. That's
right.
You know, if I think that I'm a valuable person, and that's the first sort of like hurdle, is knowing that you are valuable, because here's kind of a fact to cement that. You have to think about everything that it took for you to come into existence in this world. Your parents had to meet, their respective parents had to meet, and respected literally through the beginning of time and existence. And if your mom had gone out to the store the day that you were conceived, instead of being with your father, like, you wouldn't be here today. Or if or if your father was traveling, like that had to happen. And there was something that I looked up, because I'm also a physics nerd, about the statistical probability of a specific human coming into existence is 1 in 400 quadrillion, which is 12.
That sounds crazy to me.
It literally doesn't even make sense.
It does not make sense.
It's almost impossible that you're here statistically speaking.
Wow.
And so when you look at your life and say, I was born on purpose, then why are you here? To the point that my coach asked me, why are you here then? And why did you have to go to get to where you are? Because the other part of self-adoration is looking back at your history, not just your history, but your ancestral history, and looking at the gifts that were passed along to you, so that you could see, oh, this is why I was born in this timeline. This is the job that I'm supposed to complete. This is what I'm supposed to leave here on earth. But it starts with you realizing that you're here on purpose and taking care of yourself accordingly. That's pillar number one, non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. I love that you said it's non-negotiable, because guys, it is non-negotiable to take care of yourself. And it's never a selfish thing to take care of yourself. And, you know, especially from our Latino backgrounds, and I always go back to this, we're so used to giving that you taking care of yourself is an act of rebellion almost, because it's just not something that we are supposed to do. We're supposed to just give, 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 give. And I, for example, I stopped. It's hard to stop. That is so hard to just stop giving. And I started taking care of myself, and I feel so much better from it. So a non-negotiable, I love that you said that. Non-negotiable is taking care of yourself. Please continue. But I just had to emphasize on that, because it really is a non-negotiable.
Yes. And I will say one of the biggest limiting beliefs that you have to challenge when you go through this process is the belief that it's selfish to take care of yourself. And I argue that it's selfless to take care of yourself, because when you don't take care of yourself, you're not eating right, you're not sleeping well, you don't have time for yourself, you burn out, and then someone else is going to take care of you because you didn't. So yes, give, but give from a place of abundance and not scarcity. Give from a place of wanting to give versus being obligated to, because it's also important, the power of no. Not everyone gets access to you.
Absolutely.
And so when you value yourself, you realize, I'm a gem. I'm an incredible human being.
Yes, I'm snapping, everyone. I'm snapping.
So yes, it's best to take care of yourself, because you're also taking the burden of someone else to have to take care of you when you burn out, when you will burn out if you don't take care of yourself. So once you have that inner coach in mind, remember, one of its job is to change your mind. Then it's time to change your mind now. And the 3 mindsets that I incorporate into my self-leadership framework is focused on abundance, right? I've said that word a few times, growth orientation, and also optimism. When you embody those 3 mindsets, you believe anything is possible. You believe that it is your birthright to receive everything that comes your way. So your gratitude also is enhanced. You believe that you can learn anything, because we came out the womb not knowing anything. We literally had to learn how to walk, right? And babies don't start walking and fall and say, you know what? I don't think this is going to be for me. I think I'm just going to be on the floor and not walk. I'm not doing this. No, you keep going. It's deliberate practice and effort and consistency, but you can learn everything. Every master was once a novice. And if you remember that, realize that, yes, you might suck at something, but you just haven't mastered it yet.
Yep. I agree. I totally agree. I read this book called, I believe it's 10,000 Hours. I forgot the name of the book, but the guy basically what he's saying is, we're not, again, like what you're saying, we weren't born experts. But if you put in time, if you put in the hours, you're going to see that from 0 to 10,000th hour, you're going to become an expert at whatever it is that you want to do.
Absolutely.
And that goes with actually trying and putting effort every day and learning a little bit every day and knowing that you're capable, even if you don't know something at the beginning, you're more than capable of learning that thing. So it was just interesting that you said that, because I feel like people really think they're not capable of a lot, but if they really knew the power of themselves, they'd see how they can really genuinely, and I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart, they can do anything that they want.
Yeah.
Anything. And that goes with even the craziest, most far-fetched things that you can think of. You can do it. It just takes commitment and time. And again, the mindset.
Yes.
And I started to incorporate that. And I was like, this is crazy. It was that easy. And it's not easy. I mean, I'm not saying it's that easy, but I mean, it really is. It can be that simple.
Yeah.
It really can. So thank you for saying that. I love that that's one of your pillars we're going into because it's powerful.
And, so going back to, I'm gonna always tie back everything to the queen. So the mindset expansion, the growth and confidence, it starts in the queen. The daily habits, like I said, one of your coach's job is to institute daily healthy habits. You're not going to go from 0 to 1,000 and make that sustainable, but you can go from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2, and eventually you get to 1,000. If you part of my practice is I have a mindset limiting belief practice. When I have a thought that I can't do this, this is too hard, I'm never going to learn this, whatever it is, that thought, I challenge it. And I'm like, what else is possible? And that comes from not only my growth, my intellectual wellness practice of reading and listening to podcasts and having conversations like these that expand me, but my spiritual practice is my journaling. A lot of it is journaling. And so in my journal, when I am trying to achieve something and I'm having a hard time achieving it, I sit with myself, which is spiritual wellness, is being with yourself. And I say, what is the thought that's keeping me from this action? And it's something like, this is too hard. This is overwhelming, whatever the thing is. And then I'm like, I sit with it. I'm like, okay, if this is overwhelming, then what are you trying to do? Let's take something off your plate. And it really helps you when you're tapping into that. It helps you become emotionally intelligent, which also hits your emotional wellness. It's all interconnected. And then it allows you to get into a growth mindset, to get into it's not a one and done. It's a continual process. But when you learn how to build a habit, you can literally change yourself. It's so powerful. You can say, I am going to run, I'll share an example. So I ran a half marathon and I've never run a 5K or a 10K. I just said, I'm going to go straight for the half marathon.
That. Yeah.
And so I got an app and I started training. When I first started running, I could barely run a mile. But the way the program works is it's incremental. So every week it would extend the amount of time and the amount of miles that I was running. And eventually I ran 2 half marathons from nothing. I run for a minute before, So every client shift starts with a small action and then it compounds. The power of changing yourself is starting. You start and then you just keep going. Even if it's literally 1%, you will have a measurable difference than someone who never starts or someone who goes to 100% and they can't sustain it because they don't have the endurance.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm such a believer in that. I am such an advocate for people always DM me how do I start a wellness practice? How do I start, a morning ritual? I'm like, listen, it starts small. The problem is that as human beings, we want to go from 0 to 100. And it's not real. And it's just this time that we live in that people think that we're going to go from nothing. Let's say you want to lose weight, right? That's a perfect example. People think that they're going to magically lose it in a month.
Right.
Ma'am, sir, absolutely not. This takes practice. This takes commitment. So for me, I always tell people, okay, well, if you have no rituals in the morning, why don't you start, if you don't make your bed, why don't you start making your bed every day? Just that one, just the one. You don't have to do anything else. All you have to do is get out of your bed and make sure that you're doing your bed. Once you incorporate that for a couple of weeks, maybe 2-3 weeks, then add another one. Maybe what you want to add is something simple like drinking a glass of water every single morning after you make your bed.
Yes.
And so then you start incorporating the drinking of the water. And then those 2 things, you don't even realize that they're actually starting to add up.
Yeah.
So then you do the 2 things. Once you get the hang of drinking the water, maybe you just want to journal 1 page every day after that. Just 1 page. Just don't make it like a thing because people think that journaling needs to also be 45 pages. It could be, it could be. I'm not saying can't, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And so honoring that and honoring where you are starting and taking those small steps. Oh my God, I love that you said that because I'm really such a believer in the small steps because that's how I got started. I was the person that thought that I had to do a million practices in the morning. Otherwise, I was not valid. And then I was like, this doesn't make sense. This, I just started to reprogram myself and was like, this doesn't make sense. I need to start small. And again, I started listening to podcasts and a lot of these experts say, start small. You can't go from 0 to 100 because that's how you give up. A perfect example is when people try to diet. I don't knock people who try to diet, but if you try to diet and then you give up because you're changing your diet so drastically, you're going into shock pretty much.
Yeah.
You don't keep up with it. You give up because you're like, it's too hard, it's too much. That's what happens when you try to zoom past the process.
Yeah.
That's literally what happens.
Yeah.
So I always say that start your ritual small, or anything that you do, because anything that you put into practice, I always say it's a muscle. Anything.
Yeah.
Anything and everything that you do, communication, starting your morning rituals, going to the gym, whatever it is, these are muscles that you're trying to build. And so taking it slow so you're not going into shock and then not wanting to do them is really, like, I'm such an advocate for that. So thank you for saying that. I will let you continue. I love going on these little rants because, like, I get really, like, passionate about what you're saying.
No, I love it. I'm glad it's right. Yeah. What you described is habit hacking. And the habit hacking, again, that's one of the jobs of your coach, right? You create a coach. And I often at times actually tell my clients to name their coach, because a lot of us are very aware of our inner critic. We hear that a lot. But you should also have an inner coach. And your inner coach, how it starts off is, it's a combination of the positive things that you have heard or people have told you that you sort of start adding into your toolkit until that inner coach, instead of me hearing, oh, like, that's not these voice, like, that's my voice now. So my inner critic was Connor. He was a white man who told me all the things I couldn't do. And my inner coach was Isabella. She was 6 foot tall, Dominican from New York, like, wears Tim's, like, a huge
love it.
But I also realized that Connor wasn't trying to keep me from achieving what I wanted to. Connor was really fear. It was telling me you didn't want me to succeed, but it was scared of me being disappointed. So if I tell you to do something, that keeps me from failing. And so a lot of times your inner critic is somebody else's fear. Like, you internalize somebody else's projections of what they can't do onto you. Like, oh, you'll never be anything. If somebody tells you you'll never be anything, you are hearing their internal voice, what they tell them. And so creating your inner coach is pivotal, because you need to combat your inner critic to get empowered to be able to keep up the rituals in service of your growth and your abundance. And the last part of it is optimism. You need to change how you see that life happens for you and not to you.
Yeah.
And when you start that, there's a book that I read by Gina DeVee, and it's called The Audacity to Be Queen. And she has an exercise that I now use and incorporate into my practice. And it's when something is happening to you and you're, like, having a hard time coping with it. The prompt is, I love that this is happening to me because.
Oh.
And you try to figure out, what are you getting from that that's positive? It's very, I would say, if you have not processed your trauma, like, walk into this very gently, because it can be very triggering. But if you do have a therapist or have done extensive amount of inner work or moderate amount of inner work, it's very powerful to step into the things that are challenging you, that are not life-threatening, that are not abusive, and say, what is this teaching me? Like, benign example, you get a flat tire and you lose it because you got a flat tire. And then you ask yourself, well, I'm glad that this is happening to me because I avoided an accident. I had more time to get ready I was reminded how great I am as being able to solve flat tires because I've gotten so many of them. Like, step into a power when things happen to you and act like the universe, God, source, energy, whatever you call this greater power, is teaching you, is like the professor that is giving you experiences in life for you to learn. And what are you supposed to learn from that? And what's so powerful about that, my partner told me something that is probably the best compliment I've ever heard. He said, it's almost like nothing bad can happen to you, because anytime something goes your way, you celebrate it. But when something doesn't go your way, you examine it and say, well, what did I learn from that?
Wow.
And my mom is like the most optimistic person in the world, never met anyone like her, but she has taught me to constantly look at trying situations and say, what am I learning from this?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question.
Yeah. So that's the second pillar. And we spend a lot of time there because in order to change your life, you have to change your mind. You can't go
Yeah.
around that. What you
Mm-hmm.
perceive is your reality, what you give energy to expand. If you do not change your mind, you will not change your life. But it
Yeah,
starts.
I agree. And it starts with you. I'm very such a believer in words and what you say to yourself. They're vibrations that you are literally giving out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so if you are not changing your mindset, you are not changing the words that you speak to yourself, you are telling God, the universe, whatever your higher power is, that you're not worth. Like
Yeah.
it's just literally reciprocating what you're asking and you're saying out loud and what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So I love that. I am such a believer in that. And then I know you wanted to go into the third, right?
Yeah. So leadership is where now action
Mm-hmm.
happens. So you're doing all this learning, you're doing all this growing, you're changing your mind, you have different horizons for what you want to do and all of that. And now it's like, well, what do I put my energy into? Right? Like you have all you see is possibilities. You know that you can teach yourself things. Okay, cool. Now this is where the joy starts to become focused. The first part of the self leadership is personal vision. I cannot tell you how many times I've had conversations with leaders that I asked them, what do you want in 5 years? If I gave you a magic wand and I told you you could have everything that you wanted, but the catch is you have to be explicit about what it is you want. How many articulate that? So
Wow.
your personal vision, it's actually one of the habits from the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's what are your core values? What is your
Mm-hmm.
mission? What is your vision for your life? And what is your purpose? The same way that an organization, when it starts, in order for an organization to be successful, it has to know why it exists and what it's trying to do and how. It is your purpose to figure out why you're here and what you're supposed to do with all of the traumas and all of the gifts and all of the lessons. When you get that clarity about why you're here, you become unstoppable. You are on fire because now you can teach yourself anything. You can imagine anything. You know how to create a habit to create whatever reality that you want. And now you know where to focus that energy. So when you have that on paper, the second part of that is action.
Yeah.
A queen is action oriented. She understands the power of no, but she also understands the power of now, which is also another book. Action in the present. Your future starts today. If you want to rest it tomorrow, you have to sleep tonight. You know,
Right.
it starts
Yeah.
today. And
Yeah.
so now you're taking action, but it's mindful action because it's based off of all the things you've been finding out about yourself and all the things you've been learning. And then the last component of self-leadership that I think a lot of people, they get the vision, they know how to learn things, they're moving forward and they think, I have to do all these things by myself. The last part of leadership is building your court. Friends, family, mentors, peers, coaches, therapists, podcast hosts. You have to build your crew of people that when your inner coach is not up to par, when you're feeling down, you're feeling defeated, when you're not succeeding, someone from your core is going to be like, you got this.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want to. Like you need external support, not only to support you emotionally, but to support you professionally, to give you ideas, to listen to what you have to say, to help you go along the path that you're trying to go to. And I think when you have the completion of that, you have someone who is adaptable, who navigates, who is resilient, who is collaborative because she sees opportunities instead of competition, who learns from all of her mistakes. When you take each of those steps and you literally become a leader, even if you're not leading anyone else but yourself. And I think that that is one of the most powerful ways for women to break barriers, not only in their own businesses, but in their organizations, is realize you're a queen and act like it. Queen has high quality expectations. She adores herself unconditionally. She's emotionally intelligent. She's discerning with her energy, and she believes in the power of now and no. And when you embody that, the world is your oyster.
It is. That's so beautifully said. I feel like you compacted that in such a beautiful way. A lot of people, the part that they fear the most is the action part. I've, hosted a lot of events, retreats, and people tend to shy away from actioning. And again, this is why I love your pillars. I love your pillars because they start with confidence pretty much. Like, these two things, changing your mindset and finding, spiritual wellness and all these wellness in all these areas, with those two, you really are able to take action. And that is sometimes what people don't, I guess, understand, that in order to take action, the reason why you are not taking action is because you are missing these two. Like, those pillars are so important. Before you begin the action, you have to have these two components that really solidify why you're taking the action. And it pushes you forward. Even on the days that you don't want to take action, it still pushes you forward. It's there. It gives you confidence. It gives you like this boost that you never had. I know, at least I felt it. Like, there are days that I don't want to show up. But embodying my queen energy, I'm like, I need to show up. This is for me. This is for my ancestors. This is for my descendants. This is for the people that believe in me. These pillars are just so beautifully connected. So, guys, obviously, everybody needs to hire and get coached by Caroline, because this is crazy. Like, this is amazing. I think we kind of touched up on this, but my question to you would be like, what change can you see when incorporating these pillars? We kind of went through that, but if you can kind of clarify for the audience, okay, once they're done with these three pillars, right? Once they go through these practices, what can they see on the other side?
Oh my gosh. Not just joy, right? That's my specialty, not just joy, but it is an unending sense of trust in yourself and in the universe, that the path that you're on, the vision that you are trying to actualize is for the greater good. That has to be a layer of it. And in the situations where there is uncertainty, when you don't know what the next step is, you can step back into your practices, your wellness practices, and say, I need something right now. I'm not really sure where to go next. Go into stillness and realize that the answer is always within you. And so what I would say, the biggest thing is self-trust. Trust that you are doing exactly what you're supposed to do. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. And I think that's priceless.
I love that. I agree. It is priceless to trust yourself. And it's funny because a lot of people don't trust themselves.
They don't know
themselves. A lot of people, right. How can they trust themselves if they don't know themselves? And through these three pillars, you definitely gain the things of knowing yourself. And then after that comes the trust, right? So I love that you said this, because a lot of people just don't trust themselves, and it sucks. It's sad, but then there are ways to do it. There are ways that it's not impossible for us to do that. And then for our last question, I would love for you to tell us how we can begin to incorporate these pillars in our everyday lives. If somebody came up to you and was like, all right, what's the first step I need to take? The first thing that I should do to really find joy and incorporate all these pillars, right? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So I would say there's two answers to that. I know you asked for one, but there's a sort of like quick and easy one, and then there's the one that's like actual. The quick and easy one I already referenced is name your inner coach. Name that person, because it establishes for yourself that you do have an inner coach that deserves to exist within you. You do deserve to have someone that's like your little angel that's rooting for you in everything that you jump into. So that's the first step, is naming them. The second step is you need to assess yourself. A lot of times when we talk about leadership development, one of the core components of improving anything is you have to give it energy. It starts with awareness. So when you go into these 9 pillars, and I also have a PDF that I can send to people if they email me to kind of start them on that path, but assess yourself across these 9 pillars and say, 1, do I even know that this exists? Like, is this a new pillar? And then 2, pick one practice from each one of them that you want to incorporate into your year at some point. And then write them down and figure out, how will I do that? I have a very, very extensive wellness practice. And so at any given moment, I'm literally pulling from every single pillar at least once a week. But then there are times where I'm like, you know what? I've been very stressed lately, or I feel overwhelmed. Let me go get a massage, or I kind of confused. I'm not really sure what direction to go. Let me go take a walk outside and just be in nature. Or let me just be, let me have nothing scheduled and just be and see like what comes from me. I've had visions that come to me when I'm like resting in bed. I've had visions that come to me going to an art museum and see some piece of art that just enlightens me in some way. So your joy is meant to help you stay on your path. The power of your intuition is unlike anything else. And really, when you start listening to yourself is when that self-trust comes in, because you listen to yourself and you act in accordance with what you're feeling. So I gave you like a bunch of different routes there, but it really starts with naming your coach and then starting that self-assessment so you know what you're working with.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that stood out to me was sometimes you just have to do nothing.
Yeah.
Seriously, like I've been at a point where of stress or burnout, close to burnout, and I stop and do nothing. And the amount of energy that I get from that, the amount of visions that I get from that, the amount of ideas that I get from that, because our creativity, our bodies, our minds, they also need rest. Like that is part of incorporating these pillars, is really knowing when to step back. And I'm not saying don't do anything for like a week or two. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is maybe you need a day. Maybe you need 2 days. Maybe you need to be out in nature. Maybe you need to be in community. Maybe you need to, I don't know, watch a show and just get lost in whatever it is that you're feeling. Because doing nothing, there's a power in doing nothing. There is power. And it took me a long time to learn that. Because I was like, go, 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 go. And if I wasn't going, then I felt like I was meaningless and I wasn't doing anything with my life. It was crazy. I was like, this doesn't make sense. My ancestors worked so hard. I don't know that they necessarily want me to work this hard, like, like they got my back. They did the hard work so that I can rest. Even rest is such a thing that we don't do enough of. And even now, before we started this podcast, I was like, oh, I'm a little tired. I was telling you that I was a little tired. That's even a sign for me. I need to step back and maybe rest a little bit,
So if you find yourself unable to stop being a busybody, that is a classic trauma response. Because stillness can be, just like I described my story and how I had to face myself when the quarantine hit. Stillness is when your life catches up to you. When you're not distracted from the world by yourself, your life catches up to you, and that can be very overwhelming. So if you find yourself unable to chill out and sit still, you got some trauma to work through. I've lived that. I've seen it. Stillness is one of the best remedies for clarity. Rest is, if you think about nature, nature is not always flowering. It's in cycles. It hibernates, it sheds, it grows, it blooms. And we are nature because we're animals that are more evolved, So if you find yourself unable to rest, that is a classic sign that you need to rest, because there's some stuff that your body needs to process.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually, we were talking about like a generational gift. Being able to rest is a gift. And so needing the time and taking time, and if, like you said, it's difficult for you to take the time, you need to reevaluate. You need to see where that trauma is coming from. So thank you for saying that. And we are coming to the close of our episode. But before I close the episodes, I always love to ask 3 questions that hopefully you can answer. They're not too stressful, I hope. I think it's just to like lighten the mood. But if you need a couple seconds to come up with the answer, please let me know. So the first one is, what's one word that describes the season you're in right now?
Magnetize.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. I don't think I've ever had somebody use that word. I love that.
I am becoming everything that I want to bring into my life.
Oh, I love that. I love that for you and for everyone that's surrounding you and learning from you. Because when you feel that, people are drawn to you and people grow in that space with you, The second question, one piece of advice you'd want to leave behind if you had to leave the earth tonight.
It is your responsibility to be everything that you're meant to be while you're here. So whatever you have to do, whatever fear you have to let go of, whatever baggage you have to put down to become who you're supposed to be, that is your responsibility to give that to the world. So go start on that today.
I love that. That is so powerful. It's funny. I always tell people, it's like a saying that I have, what happens to you is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to change it. So I love that you said that. And then to our third and final question, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
Worst advice I've ever received: that I didn't have enough experience to do whatever I wanted to do, that I had to get to a certain level to do something. That stops me from starting my coaching career. It stops me from writing my book. It goes into the idea that you have to have done something in order to be able to do something that like literally doesn't math. So if you want to do something, even if you're terrible, like start. That's kind of like
Yeah,
my theme. Start today, not tomorrow, not on Monday, not this weekend. Start today. If you want to be a writer, go write a
practical.
page today.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Caroline, it's been such a joy to have you on.
Yeah.
We dove deep today, and I really appreciate your wisdom because you have so much wisdom. Just your energy is infectious. So thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to sharing everything that you've learned in all your years and your career. I'm excited because we will in the fall winter time be collaborating in an event, so guys stay tuned for that. It's going to
Yeah.
be a really good one. And just yeah, thank you for showing up in the world. We need more of you. And
Thank you.
it's exciting that we met, and it's exciting to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to add one more thing, a shameless plug before we part. So
Love
in
it.
the next month or so, I will be also launching my private one-on-one coaching and my group coaching. My group coaching is going to be for 20 trailblazing women. If you are a woman who has big dreams for what you want to accomplish, whether it's in your own business, it's in your career, just have a big vision for a way of leaving the mark on the world, I am here to support you, inviting a group of 20 women, and then I'm accepting 7 clients in my private coaching practice that will basically go through the framework that I walked through today and help you establish the habits, the mindset, and the actions to help you achieve whatever it is that you want to in a way that is joyful, confident, and successful.
I love that. And guys, we're going to have the way that you can connect with Caroline. I'm going to have everything in the description below. So if you're called and you are one of those women that is looking for exactly what she just described, I really recommend that you reach out to her. And like she said, don't wait till tomorrow, start today.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time.